Hey, good morning, and thank you for joining another episode of Sales and Marketing Friday Talks. As usually, every second Friday, we share insights, best practices, and anecdotes from technology companies and people who are related to the sales and marketing. And this time, we have another interesting topic to be discussed. We think that it is actually very even demanding topic nowadays about the role of the salespeople, and we have for that invited Bostjan Strazer from the Hansen Beck. And what is interesting about the Bostjan that he is not only the trainer, but he is also the ice pilot, and we will come back to this in a moment to understand from him what does it really means. Welcome, Bostjan.
Welcome.
Welcome and hi to everybody.
Yeah. So thank you for joining. And as we were preparing for this conversation, we had some talks about the role of the salespeople and why this topic is so important nowadays. And I think most of us probably know that and observe those changes what are happening out there. So customers are taking over more and more of the sales process. So even in the B2B nowadays, larger part of the sales process is actually driven by the customers themselves. They do research, they do some studies, they investigate solutions and compare different vendors and so on and so forth. And how then in all that can the salespeople be involved, and what they can contribute to this process to stay relevant? And that's the main question for us today to understand. And I think let's start maybe by sharing some observations. And I know that Ron usually has some data to share. Let's ask him for what has changed in this process lately.
So from my perspective, Andres, what we have seen over the years is that generally research indicates that buyers are more and more willing to use self-service, right? And particularly that increased during COVID, when people had been glued to their screens. They had quite a lot of time, so they really like to do their own research and so on. And that's an ongoing trend. So seemingly sellers would have less and less work actually in closing the deals. However, from other hand, we also see research from Gartner which indicates that even given buyers' preference for self-service and online tools, if salesperson is participating in the deal, then deal is bigger in terms of revenue, and also end customers are more satisfied with their purchase. So seemingly there is still very, very critical role that sales are playing. So I'm very interested in Bostjan's perspective on that, because I understand, Bostjan, you are working with sales and training them basically all the time, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's part of one of the pillars of programs that we deliver at Hansen Beck, where our main actually goal and what we do with the participants of our programs is to get the long-term behavior change with the participants. Either they are sellers, or they are leaders, or they are actually teams, because these are kind of three different pillars that we address, that we work with. But the main thing is not just to focus in the trainings on kind of getting the skills and some knowledge needed to perform certain tasks or work, but also we deal with what our mindset should be, what our influence looks like to other people, which in sales it's very important, as we will also discuss later on. What is our attitude that we approach things that we do, not just the skills. And we believe that with those four components, we are actually able to drive the long-term change of the behaviors.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we gonna to dive deeper today about this behavior change. We probably will not touch on the processes and things related to that. And that's another conversation. But today it would be really great to learn from your experience working with those sales professionals. what type of behaviors are required today, and how to practically, get into this right set of skills and behaviors to tackle those challenges what we just discussed. But before maybe diving in, I would like to return to this kind of point about the ice pilot. Could you just explain what does it really mean and why? Why do you call yourself as an ice pilot? It's a bit interesting.
Thanks for asking. And actually, when I joined the team and when I announced, that, and some people that know me kind of looked and had the same question, like, "Oh, this is really interesting, but what does that ice pilot really mean?" And there's a story about it. So the Hansen Beck, when we were in forming the company, then it was actually the whole idea behind how we want to actually also communicate what we do and how we do and what we believe in. And Hansen Beck kind of derives from two people. It's actually two surnames of Hansen and Beck, of the two ice pilots that were actually helping Roald Amundsen in his exploration of the South Pole. So he was the first one to actually arrive. There was a kind of competition who would first reach the South Pole, and he managed to do it. And the ice pilots are very, very crucial elements on the ship, because they navigate, the ship through,
I see.
To not bump into the icebergs, etc. And without them, they probably would not succeed as they are. And this is why we call ourselves the ice pilot, because we are similar to them. We are in the background helping leaders, helping sellers, helping team members to be successful on their journeys, and to support them through that.
Okay, that's very promising. That means that today we also will learn from you some really helpful tips how to navigate through these challenging times and environment. Coming back to the topic, how do you see what has changed, and what have buyers demanding now from the salespeople? What type of the behaviors it requires, basically, and how does it look from your experience?
Yeah, well, as Roland mentioned, so what has actually changed is the volume of information that buyers actually have. It doesn't mean that in the past, before the internet even, or before, let's say now, as Roland mentioned, the time of COVID, when we were actually more at home and we kind of relied more on the information that we have out there, people were always trying to do some kind of research on their own before they made a decision to buy something. Now, what has changed is the volume of information, is the where we have that information, etc. So, if we are really honest, did it really change? Not much. Just the sources are different.
Yes.
But apart from, let's say, looking into the internet and making our own research from whatever information that we get out there, there are also other means or other people that we usually involve into the when we decide to buy something. These are also many times our friends or people we trust. And even if we think about some real case example, even today, let's say you think about buying a car. Do you go just online, you do all the research, and then you just purchase, kind of click buy? Not likely. Yeah. What you would actually do? You would probably go to the dealership still with all the information you have gathered. Yeah,
Bostjan, if I can share, I just bought a car.
Okay.
And I'll share how I did it. Actually, first of all, what triggered my purchase was that the other car, I had some issues with sensors. So I thought, okay, it's already getting a bit old. And then I talked with one of my friends who bought Toyota. So I thought, okay, let's look at Toyota. So they had good offering, and I just clicked the button, registered, got a call, and I went for a test ride. But that was it. The rest was digital. And I also went to pick up the car. So at least for me, I'm certainly preferring, doing research on my own. I'm also very influenced by my peers, right? But after that, I mean, car is a car. I think at the moment when I went to buy it, I knew probably more about it than maybe salesperson, because salesperson has to keep in her head maybe 20 different car models. I was focused on one. So at least for me, and maybe I'm exception, I mean, if it was online only, I would be more than happy just not to talk to anyone. But I must say, sales lady was extremely professional. She's explaining everything and so on. But at least for me, I could even probably do it on my own.
No, it's amazing example, because you did your research, and then you said you went to the test drive and you even talked with the salesperson there. Now, what happened in that process actually? You were actually just go ahead.
Yeah, well, like small chat, exchanging courtesies, etc. Here's the car, then explaining about the car. But quite honestly, I was just I have no doubt that car is reliable. I checked my research. It's not a new car, right? It's real boring. I checked it because of reliability, because of 10 years warranty, and and so on. And maybe a color also was a playing factor. But during the test drive, I just did it because I thought maybe it would be fun, but I would buy it anyway. Because I'm not cars guy. I cannot compare two cars. I need to get from point A to point B, and I cannot imagine anything that could possibly happen on the way, so that I would thought it's a bad car. But maybe I'm just that kind of person. And quite honestly, I cannot recall or remember, and it was even a bit kind of too much of explanation salesperson was doing. I still had to figure out on my own how to switch on, this adaptive cruise control and so on, because I couldn't remember details.
And that's great stuff that you just mentioned, that I wanted to lead it through when we have this interaction with the seller, and you mentioned a good word. So they were just talking too much. And when we are talking about that, when we go to the point where we engage with the seller, then what is his real goal, or what is his real role to play, or what we would expect from him is to help us validate our kind of things that we have done, help us actually think through maybe something that we didn't think through, challenging us a bit in that decision maybe, and actually dream with us, try to find the best possible solution for us. Now, if that's how we would imagine what seller should do. So just going from the part that we talked about, the need. So we had a need, you need a car, towards something that you want that particular car. So we are kind of fueling in the emotions, and we talk about finding together the solution that is in best possible interest of you. And this is where we spend a lot of time with sellers that we work with, is if we want to be in that position, then talking too much doesn't really help. It's all about kind of how I would be able to be sure that whatever you imagined at home, doing your own research, is the best possible solution for you. If I don't try to understand what do you really need, what do you really expect, what do you really kind of look after for in that purchase that you want to make. And how do we achieve that? If you go back to what Andrei said, hopefully we get some kind of hints and tips. It's very simple: asking questions. And this is what, particularly in that case, that's why I also choose kind of the car dealership example. As a sellers, we usually know a lot about our things that we sell. And it's a big trap that when we know a lot about something, then we feel urge when we meet the customer, let's tell them all about it, let's tell them all the possible features and all sorts of stuff.
It's so true.
We're not even sure is that something that is of interest of the customer. So the first kind of thing I would like to touch here is like, let's question more and listen more.
Yeah, I think you touched a very, very kind of right point, and we all probably, as being like also sellers in a way, especially when you are so passionate about your stuff, like what you provide as a service or as a product or whatever, you really kind of try to explain everything what you can, share all the knowledge and everything about this product, and convince the person to that it's really good. And probably that's can be considered as a big mistake nowadays, especially when people, as Roland, for instance, like we can imagine this is quite a typical buyer nowadays, who did the own research. He already knew what he needs, and he just need an assistance. And that, I think, what probably sellers need to change mindset to more to this facilitation rather than to kind of aggressive driving. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. What do you see? What are these new skills and behaviors what actually required?
Well, to me, it really doesn't make a difference whether or not it doesn't make a difference how much person already made his own kind of research, etc. Because if we would rely on that and we would not try to explore, did really the customer, what are the other things that customer might think about? What are the other things that he didn't really take in consideration? What are really his needs? What he believes? What he's, as I said before, what are his dreams? What is his kind of self-fulfillment that he wants to make with this, etc. That makes us then an opportunity to broaden the scope. That makes us, and exactly to the point that Roland mentioned at the beginning, if the sellers are involved into the process, it happens that the deals are larger. And they're not just larger because the amount kind of changes, but they're larger because we explore the areas that the customer at first didn't think about it. And that gives us opportunity to actually do more with such customers.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite complex thing for seller to really properly kind of diagnose, understand the buyer and his motivations. Because in my case, like looking simply from my perspective, I knew what I want. Tell me where I have to sign. That's it. Thank you. And I'm happy, right? But from other hand, and we have also seen that in our business. Although there's a saying, if a customer is ready, seller must just shut up and close the deal. It doesn't always work, particularly for complex and risky things, because you cannot rely that your buyer always knows actually the consequences of buying the product or using it or the risks. And sometimes they may have just wrong impressions, and unless you challenge them and unless you validate that actually they know what they are buying and the solution will fit their needs, you can get into trouble with somebody who's terribly frustrated after the purchase and so on. So it's a tricky thing. I don't know, Bostjan, what would be your advice to sellers or to companies, how to actually strike this balance, right?
No, amazing point, Roland. It's as you mentioned, because you said buyer might be frustrated at the end, because if we would just be the order takers, so we would assume, okay, he did his own research, he wants this, let's him sell this, then it's based on a lot of assumptions, might be because of or misinformation or missing pieces that he didn't research or whatever else. And the only way how we can overcome that is, of course, again, not to try to explain everything, but to really try to deeply understand what customer needs are. And we do this by very simple things that we do usually with our friends or families or whatever. Because if we think about it, we are selling all the time. And this is also something that we kind of think, especially when we approach teams on the sales workshops, and then you always have somebody that says, yeah, but I'm really not in a sales kind of role. But we sell every day. We sell ideas. We sell, even when we discuss with friends or with families where to go to vacation, and we have a nice idea in head, we somehow need to sell to them. However, if we would just push our own idea without understanding what their thoughts and needs are and what they would expect from it, then we might kind of push into the wrong direction. And it's the same with the example that you just mentioned. So it's kind of very practical. We call this technique throwing pebbles when we have discussions with the customers, and it's called like that by purpose. When you throw the pebble in water or near the water, or you miss the water, what happens? You actually hear whether or not you kind of throw the pebble in the water or not. And that's the same when we engage with our customers. So we are asking questions, and with that, with the response, we kind of get potential directions of our conversations, and that kind of can open up opportunities to sell more, to make sure that we are offering the right solution. Maybe it will even figure out that, okay, whatever customer came in with his own first idea, it's actually not the right thing to do. We need to do something else. Or if we are actually even going into the point of ethical sales, we might, we would really build trust with the customers if we're also able to say, based on this conversation, well, maybe this is not the right solution for you.
Can I ask you, maybe you can share what are your ways how you work, and how you, let's say, from your perspective as an outside trainer and consultant, how do you diagnose the situation at customers, and how do you figure out what is the right change of attitude for their team or for their sales? So how do you understand the situation?
Well, it's a process actually that happens throughout the execution of our programs. And the thing is that that makes us also different from many other companies that offering similar covering similar topics on the programs they offer, is that it's very practical oriented, which means at the programs that we execute with let's say if you talk about the sales programs with the sellers, we don't spend time talking through the topics. This is how you do this is how you do that, this is what you need to do, A, B, C, D, etc. These are all things we can read in many books, we can read on our own on the internet. We can get that kind of things. The thing is, if we really want to make sure that we change the behavior, then we need to work on also providing a mirror, trying to understand how do we really behave in the situation that we found ourselves in as a sellers. So on our programs, we do a lot of scenarios that are real life scenarios. So attendees are actually all the time challenged, throw out of the comfort zone, sitting in front of the trainer. They are in the role of the sellers in this case, and the trainer is in the role of the customer. And they have a real kind of sales conversation. And then they try it. And with that they learn, okay, what they did, what they didn't do, how was their behavior, what was their attitude, what was their approach, with what kind of mindset they actually started dealing with that, etc. And this is how we believe we learn the most, because it's the same as with safe driving facility. When you go there, and then you kind of first learn in a safe environment how to react in difficult situations. Then it gets into your subconscious, and then you can just use it when it happens. We want to achieve here the same. So it's a lot of practical exercises during the workshops that we do. And the other thing is that we do this on an interval basis. So whatever we touch on the workshops themselves, people then need to try in their real life between the sessions. So we have several weeks between one and the other. So they kind of take that at home, they practice, and then when we get back, we have a discussion. What went well, what didn't went well, what could they do differently? And this is kind of the learning cycle as we usually learn. If you think about it, we learn the best. So there are stages of how we learn. And at first, before we even know that we don't know something, we more or less observe. And after that, we actually try to understand what needs to be done. In that case, we kind of get into the awareness. Okay, we don't know really how this can be done. And then on the trainings, we actually try it. We practice it through. We kind of try it through those scenarios that we do. And then we do the practice in real life. And test it there, like you would be on the test drive, and then try to use it. And then if you think about, if we started with example of the car, when you learned how to drive, you didn't know when you got the license really how to drive. It took a lot of hours to do it, a lot of driving, so that you can then confidently say, yeah, now I really know how to drive. And then we come into the last stage of that, where we do it so often so that it becomes natural for our, and this is how we change behaviors. But it takes time, and it takes all these stages.
So it's combination of both, like something theoretical, if you like, and then you do a lot of practicing, both in the safe environment, and as soon as you feel more ready, you are going to the real environment, and through that you again having some feedback loop and opportunity for improvement, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But looking to your experience of running these type of workshops and trainings, do you see any commonalities nowadays on what type of behaviors, or let's say skill sets, are kind of requiring these changes or development? What basically people are missing? Are there any common things like active listening? You mentioned that's probably one of that, right? So that to listen more than to talk, right?
Yeah, and that's actually the primary one. But actually, if we think about the customers, sometimes we are also, as the sellers, we're pressured, and we kind of are pressured towards closing the specific deal because we have plans, quotas, whatnot, to achieve. And this pressure sometimes drives us as well into the fact that we don't really think properly about what is the ultimate goal that we want to achieve with our customer. Is it to take the order that we just got opportunity to get? Is it to get a new customer if we are not even at that stage? Is it to find the best possible solution to address that particular need for the customer, or is it maybe something else? And what we also discuss a lot there is something else. It's not just about that particular deal or to close that sale that we are engaged with. What actually we as a seller should aspire is what happens on the long term. And in our case, we call that the fully active recommendation. It goes a little bit into as well the other area that you are working with on a marketing side.
Yes.
Because what we really want from our customers is that they are not just purchasing our products, but they are really such customers that are on their own will willing to recommend us to others. And what's better than having that? And then the question comes, how do we achieve that? How do we get customers into that stage? And it's all about.
I can only agree on that, because now when you are talking about this concept of this long-term objective of making your customer your own salesperson, right? In a way, and I reflect my some experience as well. I can tell you that this experience with the salespeople or with the personnel on my, let's say, vendor, or would it be for instance, a bank, right? Bank, as we all use banking, so it's so much commodity nowadays. And the only difference is exactly in those personal touch points, what you have with your, account manager, or, I don't know, support assistant or anything like that. And I can tell you that I have both like positive and negative experience. So for instance, I have really been big fan of my bank, promoting it to everyone, just because of the person who was working with me. He was so good serving me and providing such a great service, so that for me it was the way how I was looking at the bank overall, right? And then I learned, though, the hard times when he changed and the new person came, it suddenly became a completely different world. And again, it made a lot of difference, and my experience was dramatically changed to the negative side. And again, I was not advising anymore and sharing negative experience. And I think that's that's very, very important aspect to keep in mind for the salespeople and the companies in general.
Yeah, it's amazing example, because it's like, we tend to forget, what happens in sales. We still sell person to person. We engage with people. So it's all about the relationship, and it's all about the trust that we establish.
Yeah, and I also think that actually what Andrei said also illustrates perhaps a counterpoint of what we were talking in beginning, that the role of salespeople has diminished. Actually, perhaps the intensity or the length of contact with salespeople have diminished. However, once you talk with person, that experience becomes extremely critical in how you evaluate the whole thing. Even if you met person for 5 minutes, it can either make you a huge advocate of the business, or it can make you really frustrated, and you will walk around telling everyone how bad it went. Yeah,
exactly. It's an excellent point you are making, Roland. I think that can summarize our conversation today, that we clearly see that the time for seller to have with the potential customer or existing customer has dramatically shortened, right? And then within this short time, you have to really make sure that you build trust and you build something which is long-term related and can provide benefit for your customer, despite that he already knows whether he wants to buy or not. But probably the role of the salesperson is really to understand deeply those needs, facilitate the decision-making process of customer, and assist to achieve their long-term goals of making those customers like an advocate. If I summarize it right, I don't know, guys, if you agree.
I do.
Yeah, agree. And it's, if we would go into definition of what really sales means, or what seller does, it's all about inducing others to act. It's a very powerful thing. Especially if we add to that, because the ultimate goal is that we induce that as a sellers, inducing others to act without the other person knowing that we have induced the action. Because at the end of the day, customer does the decision. Customer drives, the process like that. It's just on us to influence it. That's why we spend a lot of time as well on our engagements with sellers, on understanding our influence. How do we influence in the most effective way? And then the last thing I would actually add to that is as well, what is our mindset and the vision that we get into this kind of engagements? As Roland, you before asked, what are those other things that we kind of hear or see with the attendees? It's like in sports, would I win the match if I would go into that match with the mindset and vision that I will not succeed?
Yeah.
Most likely not. Yeah, might be lucky, but yeah. And it's the same with the sales engagement. So it's all about how I envision things will happen. It can, of course, that doesn't 100% guarantee I will succeed. I need to do all the hard work as well. But I need a positive vision for success as well.
So thanks a lot, Bostjan, for coming and sharing your insights and quite practical recommendations. I think we can learn a lot from what you just shared. At least for me, it made me, thinking and again rethinking even my own behavior and approach with my customers. But we all can reflect on experience what we have, right, and try to see how we can improve that for our relationships with our potential or existing customers. And those basics like active listening, like not overselling, but rather assisting on what customer already actually want to do and to have, and understanding their long-term objectives, and actually making yourself working for your long-term rather than for the short-term gains. That's quite an important reminder. thanks for sharing. I just would like to remind everyone else who is together with us in our live broadcast, or who is listening us over the podcast, or watching us on YouTube. Please subscribe to IBD Consulting on LinkedIn or other channels. Use hashtag FryTalks to find more episodes from the past, where we have really great insights from people like Bostjan. And also let us know if you have any questions or any topics you would like us to discuss and to cover. Otherwise, I wish you all great rest of the Friday. Just keep learning, and we are meeting again in a couple of weeks for another Sales and Marketing Fry Talk conversation. Stay tuned.
And thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
have a nice
absolutely.
weekend.
It was a pleasure.
It was a big
Because-
pleasure for us. Thanks for coming.
Same here. Thank you very much.